Good morning, everybody. I am Jen Holmstrom. I lead talent for GGV Capital, and I'm thrilled to be here this morning with my esteemed guest, Jamie Coakley, who is the VP of People at Electric, and Jack Meyer, who is the Chief People Officer at Slice. Jamie has a background in recruiting and helping early stage company teams grow and scale, and has been at Electric for a little bit over 2 years, and we were thrilled to have you here this morning. So I will have you introduce the company in a minute. And Jack has been at Slice for a little over 9 months, although it probably feels like a little bit longer than that, Jack.
Feels like a decade.
Growth. Yes. Both based in New York, although could be anywhere in our new virtual world. And great to have you both here. So thank you. With that, I'm going to have you describe a little bit about the companies that you're at, the size of your workforce, and what you do, what happens at both Electric and Slice as a result of you showing up every day. And let's start with Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen. Glad to be here, especially with Jack, who has helped me through many challenges in the past 9 months. I swear that doesn't sound right. But I've been at Electric, like Jen said, for just over 2 years. I was actually the first customer 4 years ago. So have seen the company grow wildly from that first time our CEO did my network install. We've grown tremendously since that point, but we provide, enterprise grade IT to small and medium businesses for a fraction of the cost. And so initially the thought was, Electric can be this outsourced remote IT partner for businesses that are big enough to have IT problems, but maybe not big enough to have an IT person. That was really the first vision. We have since expanded and grown, and now we're set out to make IT heroes within companies look great with both, the support that we provide from the help desk, as well as our product Turbine, which gives you sort of the 30,000 foot view of your IT environment and help automate support. So we are 215 people globally. I used to say 101 Dalmatians. That was this time last year. But we are 215 globally, teams dispersed across India, Argentina, New York. And now, since we are in COVID and remote, we're starting to expand nationally. I oversee people, which means anything to do with our employees. So talent and HR mostly. Did a quick sprint in customer success for 13 months, and that was wild. But, we're just here to make sure people feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, especially during this time of, so much uncertainty, and making sure that our people are engaged and we retain them. That is a business strategy of ours, and really looking now, especially through the lens of DEI, through everything that we do, in order to foster that, culture at home.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. And thrilled that you're here today.
Thank you.
Jack, what about you? Describe maybe a little bit about Slice, how you've grown over the last, not only since you've been there, but even predating that. And then what happens at Slice because of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. It's very good to be here. And it's funny, Jamie, what you said. I feel like I've known both of you forever. And it just, time is a strange thing right now. But really excited to be here with everybody today. So as Jen mentioned, I joined Slice just about 9 months ago, and I oversee all things people. So similar to Jamie, the spectrum of things related to an employee's experience from when they learn about Slice all the way through their time working at Slice, and then those sad moments when people leave. Slice is a particularly exciting place to be right now, just given the world that we're in and what the pandemic has created. We're incredibly mission driven, focused on keeping small businesses, local businesses thriving, particularly with a focus on pizza, which is one of those foods that when times are good and times are bad, if you're celebrating or you're sad and you had a bad day, pizza is just this wonderful comfort. And so it's been, an exciting spot to be in, because one of the things that drew me to Slice, and that I find, when we talk to candidates, is this idea that we're all really working toward this very common goal that people believe deeply in. And so our mission around keeping local businesses thriving is really around giving these small local pizzerias the sort of leading digital tools that help them compete with the likes of Domino's and Papa John's. And I would argue they have way better foods. Local place. So we have 700 people globally, which is insane. Just
Amazing.
totally insane. In my first 6 months, we even hired 100 people. So we're growing tremendously, which is very exciting. And interestingly, we have some people in the US, just under 100. We have about 40 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And then we have about 550 people in the country of North Macedonia, which is just north of Greece. And I think what a wonderful part of our story is our founder, CEO Lear, who is from Macedonia originally, when he got the business started, went back to friends and family there to get partnership and help to get some of the operations going. And it's become a wonderful part of who we are and how we operate in terms of from a people standpoint. We're really fortunate that we get to tap into the best talent in every market that we operate. So we're, kind of continuing to raring to go in this environment that we're in, because our hope is that we can really help these small businesses and all of us as consumers just continue to have, be able to produce and get access to really, really good local quality pizza as time continues.
Thank you for that great context and so many topics to cover today, especially in the era that we're all living in. And look forward to hearing not only how it's going in the US, but for your employees and teams around the world. So Jack, just to follow, on something you said around mission. We're here with an SMBTech audience today, and would love to hear a little bit for both of you. I think you're both very mission-driven companies. How is that? How are you leveraging that or harnessing that in order to run the business? And has that evolved since COVID, since we're all working in a remote environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, especially in the people HR space, you talk about a ton, and for years have talked about how important it is for employees to know sort of what's the big guiding principle of the company and how do they see how they fit with that. But I've been so excited, particularly at Slice, that before I joined, I would say the commitment to our mission has been one of our organizational superpowers. And so I feel tremendous responsibility to help us make sure we continue to cultivate that. I think it acts as, from a company standpoint, a wonderful sort of North Star for everybody to be really clear about where we're headed. So can guide big decisions and small decisions to make sure that everything you're doing, even people in my team who might not be directly building the product or selling it to shops, but that everybody's goal is really oriented around that big mission. So I think that's incredibly important. I also think that more and more talent is looking to be engaged and work in places that have clear missions. So for us, it's been something to lean into more. Given the pandemic, it's what we're doing, we feel is more important than ever. So I think, we're all just really excited to be able to have an impact in that way. And I think from a talent standpoint, it's something that helps, in those tough days where you're like, oh God, this is so hard. But like, if you remind yourself why you're doing it and you really believe in the thing you're working toward, that's a great motivator.
Agreed. And Jamie, what about you? Same question.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I think watching a large company like that still be so, marching to the beat of the drum as a mission is such an accomplishment. We're a third of the size Jack is, but headed that way. So very honored to hear that perspective. When I think about our mission, it's to provide IT support, right? IT powers businesses, and Electric is IT. And so we really saw this. I think we always believed it. It was always a part of, why we were here and what we marched after. But when the world ended in March, everybody went remote. All of our customers. I think our IT team set up over 200 VPNs in the first week of remote work.
Wow.
And so we really felt like the impact of what we were doing, getting all of these companies secure, able to continue to function. I mean, we were creating, me and my IT manager internally, creating like helpful guides to troubleshoot your home network, right? Because that's now a thing. Like, I can't help you with your Verizon router, but this is how you should go about it. And so I think that really just made us feel directly tied to that mission, and watching all these companies also go through really hard decisions, layoffs, mass layoffs. We had mass offboardings happen, right at that time, and just being able to show up for our customers and really be tactful and strategic with them about those motions and have their back no matter what hour of the day they needed us to be on call for things like that. Our team really, really stepped up. I think the other thing we've seen since we've gone remote is a huge rise in tickets. People need more help. They can't just turn around and ask the person next to you, like, hey, I can't access this Word doc. Like, how do I go about it? Also, randomly, when it rains, we get more tickets, something about that. So I think just seeing that within our own teams, we use our own product internally, and watching that sort of volume change and just the collaboration among teams changing when we went to remote was really exciting, but it made us pivot almost every day with realizing what our customers needed now, and now more than ever and faster than ever, because we just wanted to be able to provide that certainty, when nothing else was very certain in life.
Jamie, I could use that guide. My Verizon router.
I'll send it.
Maybe we can make it available to everyone.
Sure. It'll probably be on the website by the end of this.
How has life changed internally in terms of, you've both mentioned growth since, like, historically, but also since COVID. It doesn't sound like you've been slowing down on the hiring front or onboarding your teams. And so managers around the world are managing through this. What has the overarching impact been within both of the companies? Jamie, let's kick off with you.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. We've been having just more in-depth conversations with our managers on how to lead with empathy, how to do check-ins, like real check-ins, emotional check-ins at the top of a meeting.
And
at the start of
what does that look like, Jamie?
Not just how's it going today, team, but like, let's do a high-low. What's going on? Are you really okay? What's going on in your personal life? How has been sharing a studio apartment with your significant other who's on calls all day been going? Like, how is that working out? And not into an invasive point, but I think this is an existential crisis, and people may have bad days, and it may not be the time to give tough performance feedback on that Tuesday when someone's may have COVID. And so just taking that time to get to know our teams, I think, has been an emotional journey and an emotional stretch for a lot of our managers who, of course, cared about their people before, but now it's just, that is mostly their job, is to make sure that people are feeling okay. So I think that was the biggest change and shift, is just teaching people how to do that, making sure they're checking in, and then do something about the feedback that we get in order to support people better in that sense.
Right. And I love that you took the concrete steps of actually training your managers to do that. So there's a humanity in this moment in time that's really important to acknowledge.
Yeah, and acknowledging that it's okay to, right? Yeah. We had a whole management session. I think the first 3 weeks was like, it's okay to take a nap in the middle of the day if you're really feeling that excited. Like, sign off, let someone know. We know you're going to get your things done, but if you're a parent and you didn't sleep last night and you're also doing virtual learning, like, life has changed for you. And so you just need to manage up and communicate what you need a little bit differently. And so the it's okay to is like, it's okay to admit you're having a horrible day. Yeah. It's okay to admit that you're not going to make this deadline. It's okay that, you can't show up to this meeting because you're doing childcare or school learning. Just communicate. And so we really reset those expectations. And I think when the managers got permission to sort of talk about that low grade anxiety that was running through the org, in March and April, they then took that to their teams and had the same dialogues, which ultimately made people feel supported. There's not much else you can do other than provide that support and create the dialogue for that safe space.
Right. And Jack, what about Slice? That, and then with a specific orientation, Jamie brought up parents. Great question. Parents are now at home as teachers and employees and everything else. How is Slice? How have you addressed it, and what's the state of the state?
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, I love that you talked about what are, like, in and of themselves small things, but that can have big impact. I think that's really important. The world we're in now is really individualized. Everybody's situation is different, and people are handling it differently. I would, just to kind of complement some of the things that Jamie shared, one of the things we do is we have a pulse survey, very brief, that runs every other week. Mm-hmm. We've leveraged that over the last several months, and every few months refreshed the questions to be able to get a sense. Especially, 700 people who are now all dispersed, it's hard to know exactly where everybody's heads are at. So it's helping us make sure we stay in check with not just where the hot spots are of major concern, but also not get caught up in it's not all terrible either. So there are moments where things are going okay. So making sure we try to sort of keep a balanced perspective about that. And then I would say there's things we're still trying to get better at. I have a strong personal belief that in times of stress and things like what are happening, bringing people together is important in different ways and building a sense of community. So we've tried different things with varied degrees of success. People are definitely tired of the virtual stuff, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. So whether it was like a massive company-wide virtual team session that was like a game around who kidnapped my boss a few months ago, which was great to just bring people together who don't normally interact for 90 minutes, so not a massive time commitment, but also some things locally depending on the sort of individual office culture and what feels relevant there. And I would say on the parent front, we still have work to do. We're still, and just in full transparency, it's like hard to get right because there's so many different things impacting people. And we have people whose home lives are really different. Some people who, depending on who the primary caregiver is or the person who is helping provide care, may or may not be available. So like what Jamie shared, a lot of the focus had been on making sure that managers were having individual conversations to get at the specifics of what people need. But on a more programmatic level, we still have more work to do there.
Yeah.
Very fair.
How many, Jack, I'm curious, how many people have you hired since COVID? Like, what has that growth been like?
Like quick stat, from February 1st to August, we had hired 100 people. And so the COVID part of that was 3/4 of it. And I'm really proud of how our team in partnership with IT and in Macedonia in particular, we partner a lot with the legal team people to figure out how to adapt it virtually. The dynamic culturally and in sort of family lifestyle in Macedonia is different. Mm-hmm. People live in blended households. Internet stability is not consistent everywhere we have offices. So there's been a lot of trickiness to operate in, but it's been really awesome to see people come together and try to figure out how to make it work.
And what have you done? You both have offices. I think so. Well, but it's in both instances, it's a distributed workforce. How are you addressing culture, and how has culture evolved or changed since this new paradigm? Jamie.
How is it not? We also hired a ton of people, Jack, during COVID. I think we're close to the 100 person mark just since March. So we slowed down, really looking, is this role critical? We don't know how this is going to end. And when we came out on the other side, probably in June, with I think one of our largest months ever in revenue, we were like, put the gas on, let's go, which changed, a lot of our onboarding procedures and just making sure that culture sort of, stayed with people as we scaled. But it's definitely a challenge, in remote work. I think I look at some of the teams who had sort of some of the basic building blocks of team ceremonies or end of week wins already in place, like such a great way to end the week all together with one another. It seems so small and so simple, but the people who have stuck with it, it's almost like 5:30, we're done with wins, the laptop closes, your weekend starts, and the rest of the team is offline, because we're also seeing that boundary be totally blown out of the water with, I'm sitting in my living room. Why don't I just hop back on my laptop while I watch TV and continue to work? And then you're burning out. So I think little things like that, those little ceremonies that have stuck have really helped. We also are trying to bring people together. So gratefully, we're all in New York. And so we did some socially distanced team events in the office. We've opened at a certain capacity now. So we're at 25%. Cuomo allows 50, but I sort of kept it a little bit smaller, just not wanting to be a guinea pig in our own, workforce. We are going to be stretching that up a little bit. We have a huge office and no one's really in it. And so I think people who wanted to come in or could come in have been coming in, but they still aren't sitting with their team, right? They're still not collaborating with someone, hearing another sales rep on the phone call. And so We've looked at a lot of tools to sort of bridge that gap. We've looked at team dinners to bridge that gap. We've revamped our new hire Bolt Buddy process to make sure that you don't just have coffee virtually with someone on their first day as a buddy, but you actually attend that person's team meeting and then you meet that whole department, whether you're in it or not. And so those little tiny moments of bringing people in, I think have really helped with just making sure people know who we are, know how we work, and believe in the mission, within the first 30 days and can go from there.
I love it. And quick question just about, speaking of onboard hiring, big teams in a distributed way, onboarding them. I know that compensation has been a big topic of debate over the past few months. Jack, how does Slice approach the question of comp when, people are in this distributed environment, and has it changed in this new paradigm?
It's a little bit coincidence, but we had been doing work and planned, and it got put on hold due to the pandemic, and we picked it back up again around sort of what do we believe about how we reward people? What's our philosophy around that? And so we really sort of brought that work to life over the last couple of months. And now that we have a company-wide view and philosophy around it, it's helping us guide some of that decision-making broadly and individually. So for example, we, as we think about, and definitely in a place like the US, where we have more remote people pre-pandemic than we had in the other locations, our comp bands now allow for what it would look like in different markets, so that if we have conversations where either we're hiring somebody somewhere else, or we have somebody who's saying to us, I actually now have a situation where I need to move permanently, and is there a way for me to stay? We feel like we can guide the comp part of that analysis and discussion in a much more informed way that feels fair and not just arbitrary around,
right,
keep your comp, but that feels completely unrealistic if you're moving to a much lower cost of living location, or see like, is it in an appropriate kind of balance for our comp band? So that's one thing that's really helped. We're also being careful about how many long-term decisions we're making yet. So we don't have yet the final, like, when we're past the pandemic and knowing that things will look very different, we haven't said for sure, like, we're going to definitely keep office presence this way, and we're going to have this many people who work remote, or we're going to manage remote and distributed and in office this way. We're trying to give ourselves some room to like learn as we go a bit. And plus, for me personally, I feel like any decision we'd make about that right now, and then therefore what that means in terms of compensation for people, God knows what will happen in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months.
True.
So trying to be realistic about where we put energy on the things that matter most.
That's absolutely fair. And to that end, you mentioned the Pulse survey. Jamie, I don't know whether you're doing that as well, but given that employees are stressed and for all kinds of different reasons, what are some of the things you're doing, Jamie, to help people address their anxiety?
Oh, we pivot every day. Because to Jack's point, no one wants to be on Zoom anymore, right? So that was the first, like, the meditation classes went great. The yoga classes went great. And then all of a sudden there was like the same two people on it. And I was like, why did we pay for this? This is like not working. So I think the few things we did, first Friday of every month off through end of year. We were hearing that we'd changed actually in July to a flexible PTO plan. I had heard in, March, I don't know if I want to take this vacation. I had a 2-week vacation canceled. And so by May, I'm like pulling the numbers, 70% of our workforce had taken less than 2 days. We are running into a brick wall. So we really quickly said, take PTO. We're going to start to manage it. They didn't. No one did. So then we said, let me just remove this mental blocker for you. Yeah. Like, you don't have a finite number of days now. Take the time you need. And so we started seeing people take time off, which was great. However, then I heard, I'm working more than I ever have. It's bleeding into my personal life. I'm working 2 hours more and I've never felt more behind. It's like taking time off sometimes adds more stress, especially with the goals we have. We're a growth stage company. We're doubling in size. Like, we've never hit, every month is a milestone in pretty much every department. And so there's no real ability to let off the gas in that way. And we have also lower targets and changed the goals as well. And so we decided first Friday, everybody's offline as best we can. Service desk takes that day another time during the month to make sure they have, at least a full day off work to rest, and they're not expected to be online. We also instituted no calendar meetings, internal meetings on Thursday mornings. And so that is time to just like do the work. I think when we went remote, people needed more meetings. It got your day suddenly is back to back, and that's why you're working into the night. We also rolled out some communication strategy plans. Like, this is what it takes to have a meeting. This is what we expect of you when you book a meeting. Agenda, make sure stakeholders are prepped if you have time to do it in advance. That's more inclusive for parents who may have to miss the meeting. Record the meeting for people who miss the meeting. And so I think those, like, how we do the work was a part of it. We also have rolled out, online meditation, listening instead of Zoom video. So that's the recent shift that we've done, bringing people together for dinners and just trying to, again, to really individualize the autonomy of work for as many people as we can. Like, we care about the outcomes here, not the output. And just reminding people that, they can come and talk to us if they feel like it's overwhelming. So I think that layer of just enhanced emotional support has also helped. 2021, we're looking at parent stipends. Who knows if I'll throw a therapist in-house in that budget, because it looks like we may need it, but like trying crazy stuff just to try to, support our teams as best we can. Parents even looking at meal kits, right? Like, they have trouble prepping just lunch for their kids because they're in back-to-backs. And so how can we help with just little things here and there is sort of what we're focused on now.
Very fair. And Jack, with the teams around the world, like you have in Macedonia, Belfast, in the US, very different circumstances as it relates to COVID. How are you managing? Is there tension given that? And how are you managing that? How would you, suggest that other high growth startup teams manage it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it is definitely tricky. And since I've joined, one of the things I've talked to my team a lot about is the idea of thinking globally and acting locally. So let's make sure we're always thinking with the entire slice picture in mind, but that doesn't mean every solution we come up with or approach has to be like completely consistent. So there's some things, particularly around the work from home circumstances, where we've approached it a little bit differently in each place, given how people were enabled. For example, when we first went to work from home, not all of our employees in Macedonia had company issued laptops. So getting them set up in a combination of company issued ones, personal ones, and then eventually moving them all in the last couple of months to company issued laptops was part of sort of that evolution, like not let us stop the movement and the productivity when we first went to work from home, but figure out a longer term solution. So that's definitely sort of one example of that. And then there's been some other things, like we've lent equipment out from the office, and how we've managed that in each location has to look a little bit different given the numbers of, some of our offices in Macedonia have 200 employees versus like the one in New York has less than 100. So that's where, sort of a really good partnership with people in all the offices to figure out the combination of what should we think about company-wide, but coupled with what makes sense on the ground in each location.
Great. That actually reminded me of something that we tried, Jack, and have been sort of doing since the start of COVID, which is just like upping the communication to like a rigorous level. Like, in a world of uncertainty, we have to make our employees feel certain about whatever we can, whether it's what are we doing with our office or when am I expected to be back in. And so we extended work from home through next year just to give people some peace of mind, like go live your life, figure out where you need to be. You are not expected to be here. And just really keeping that communication almost on a bi-weekly basis from Ryan, from the executive team. This is the updates, and trying to inform them as best we can.
Yes. So true.
Well, thank you both very, very much. I think this has been a half an hour, hopefully filled with some really great insights that people can take and use. Very grateful to both of you. Thank you for being here today in our virtual world, and keep on keeping on, because you're doing a great job and building incredible companies.
Thanks, Jen, for having us.
Thanks, Jen.